Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. I am so thrilled to have Lisa Bragg here with us today. Lisa, welcome. How are you?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. You know, our relationship has been a long time in coming. People have said we needed to know each other for so long. When we finally met, I said, I need to know her even more. So I'm so happy to be here and talking to your audience and your community too. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And I feel the same. I've heard your name so many times for so many years. And it's like, how do we not know each other yet? And we did, just for the audience's purpose, we did meet before this call. And it was amazing. So, and I want to thank our audience. Thank you for being here. We know you have a choice. And I think today is going to be really an interesting and special conversation for you to participate in, because Lisa is really talking to us about, how to self-promote. And she's going to share some tips and nuggets with us. You can see her book there, Bragging Rights, which I took on holidays with me and was filled with inspiration and great tips and nuggets that you can use in your everyday life. So let me give you a little background on Lisa. She has literally written a book, which you just saw, and her book is how to talk about your work using purposeful self-promotion. And that's really important because oftentimes we forget, we brag on other people in our circles and we're constantly promoting our sisters, our colleagues, but we forget to promote ourselves. And so she has really brought to life, is the best way I know how to say it, a book that gives you practical tools to be able to do that and do it in a way that's very authentic. So we'll get into that. Lisa is also a speaker. She's an advisor and a professional mentor. She is the founder of MediaFace, a Toronto-based content and consulting firm. She was also a TV reporter and anchor for 15 years. And so that, I think, has sort of launched you into being super comfortable in front of the camera and being able to have those conversations and understanding what is the need of an audience. So Lisa, thanks so much for being here. It's great to have you.
And that's one of the best ways for self-promotion is to get someone else to read your bio. Like, it just makes it so much easier when someone else says things. So that's one easy way out of it.
Oh, I love that. Okay, that's a good tip. So let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about your background and, how that led you to where you are today and prompted bragging rights and why calling out some of those hidden gems is so important to you.
Well, my last name is Bragg with 2 G's. And so I think that's what started my journey. When I was about 13, I realized, and that's the age of my daughter now, but I realized then that I was one of them, I wanted gold stars and I wanted the A+ and I wanted the 99%. What do you mean I didn't get 100%? I wanted that. That's what we're trained for, especially as young girls. We are told the rules and how to be successful, and we believe it and we follow those things. And so, but I realized 13, 14 that my success would get eye rolling from other people and, oh, you're going to brag about it? So I didn't realize my last name carried some weight for people, some baggage, that success carried baggage. And so, because that's what bragging means, is to talk about one's success with pride, and pride also means self-love. But back then I didn't know that. I thought it was just a bad word. I thought bragging was so bad, such a taboo, which a lot of us do think that. And then I decided to become a broadcast journalist. I think it was because my parents watched a lot of TV, a lot of news. And so I would see them and see these reporters and anchors and videographers telling people's stories. And it just really resonated with me. And back in my day, the reporters weren't the front of the story. I was on air, but it wasn't all about my opinion. It was really about how do I bring out the experts that are all around me. And I'm a bit, if you're going left, I might go right, or right or left, I might go the opposite direction. Because I was always in journalism not wanting to follow the pack. It just makes me cringe when I see over and over again the same people being interviewed. So I'd try to find different people. And I'd frequently go up to people and say, hey, I think you're the expert in this. Can I interview you? And so often, especially women would say, oh, no, who, me? I don't want to be interviewed, or I'm not the expert. That's the more of what it is, though. I'm not the expert. Oh, I'm not ready. Go down the hall, go to John or Steve or Bill. And I would, fortunately, I would have time sometimes to give some media coaching and help them get on air and to tell their stories. And then I would see what success would come to them. They would then get on more media, then they'd get on a panel, then they'd get a promotion. And I do have the thank you cards still of people saying, thank you for giving me that opportunity, the nudge, right?
Love
And
that.
so helping people be seen and heard, I realized, and I think it was Oprah that said it, it's fundamental to all humans to be seen and heard. And whenever I hear those kind of things, it just actually, even right now, gives me shivers to know we should be seen and heard. If you are, and anyone listening on this right now, you already are the expert. You're not somebody who just watched a TED talk or read a book. You are an expert, but we need to have somebody give us that mantle. Oh, I'm getting choked up. I'm so excited. 1 second.
You're like me. That's me earlier. No, and you're absolutely right. Like, it's so true. Just, when you can amplify someone's voice, and we do tend to shy away, right? From, oh, don't, no, I'm not that important. Don't share my information, or don't share what I know. And yet that might be exactly what the audience needs to hear. So I love that you would do that.
And that's exactly it. Thanks for that. That's what they might just need to hear, your story. And that's where, with the book, if I can at least get one person to be seen and heard, the ripple effect of all of that could be way beyond either of us. And so that's where I'm like, okay, I need to do this. But I went into broadcasting, and then I left broadcasting and decided to own a content company. So one of Canada's first. So, helping companies and governments get online through video for the first time. So helping their subject matter experts be on video. It was so funny back in the day, because I had to explain to everyone, you should be on video and explaining your knowledge. And now we know thought leadership and things like that. But people would say to me at the end of the day, I can see what you're doing for our expert. How can you do that for me? And that's what really started to unlock it, that yes, more of us need to be seen and heard. But it wasn't just like, oh, get on social media and do all these tactics. It's really, there's so much more about how do we unlock our mindset about all of this, and what's the baggage a lot of us carry around bragging and self-promotion. And it really does hold us back. So that's my red thread, that I realized that I was called to do this book, and I had to do this book, and I couldn't stop it all. So yeah, thanks.
Well, it's amazing that you did. And as I said, like, I thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and highly recommend it, not just for women, for anyone, right? Because there is a way to brag. As much as there is the importance of bragging, there's a way to do it, right? Where it doesn't come across as egotistical, but where it's really authentic. And I know you did a lot of research, so maybe let's talk about, what did your research tell you about, what are the biggest reasons that people shy away from it, or don't want to own that greatness that they have within themselves?
Oh, so many reasons and so much behind the research, but I had to do the research part because it couldn't just be, and one, here's my story. It had to be, and just the people I'm, directly in touch with, because that would be a limited experience. So I really wanted to reach out to the world and find out what, globally are people thinking about bragging and self-promotion. And so I found that, the book barely touches all the research that came out of it. It was fascinating, fascinating. But I found that, really what it is, it's so much cultural, which is obvious. Like, it's cultural for so many of us. And it's not just that, I'm in Canada. So it's not just as a Canadian, which I thought was my original, is this just Canadians? And then somebody said, oh, no, people in the Midwest. And then I was in line somewhere, and I was telling this woman who was on so many boards and so well coiffed in New York and the whole bit. I thought, there's no way she's going to be interested in my premise. And she said to me, Lisa, I'm Catholic. Of course this book is for me. And, and she was older. So like all the research unlocked all these biases and false premises that I had on my own thinking. So it was so amazing to conduct this research. But culture, and we all think it's our own culture, that it says, keep your head down, do good work, and eventually someone will notice you. Well, in Japan, they'll have the saying, the tallest nail gets hammered first. And then there's also tallest poppy syndrome, which Canadians talk about too, but it's an Australian term, and very much in the UK, where we cut down those people who are quick to succeed. And so there's so many of those kind of sayings out there in the world that keep people in check. And it really comes from the factory era, a lot of it. So of course, because some of it comes before, but the factory era really ingrained these messages of the cream rises to the top, and, don't put your head above too high because you don't want to cut off. Like, so some of it, really entrenched in our thinking, and the social norms carry forward. So that was deep in the research and the information that I gathered. It was all these little sayings that kept us in line. And so many of us are high achievers, and we also have perfectionist standards. So we're always waiting for that next thing to make sure that no one can say anything beyond reproach about anything that, well, no, I don't just have 110%. I have 300%. Oh, but I need something more. I might need something more. And so we're like that. A lot of us are like that. There's a lot of us that identify with, so the perfectionism, the culture. Oh, there's so many more in the book that I'm blanking on them, but definitely the perfectionism, because that's going to rattle around my brain that I wasn't perfect. I think it's also that our families aren't used to us succeeding. So when we talk about our success, sometimes to family and friends, they're not comfortable with it. So it's reinforced over and over again. So many other things in the book, but it's culture, family, and beliefs, that wait till you're chosen attitude. We can see it on social media too. I think that's one of my big things, is that you'll see bragging violates modesty norms. And if you're that good, your work would speak for itself. And like, that's only if you are close to the power that you need to be close to.
Yes,
that you
exactly.
can say those things. So yeah, I can go on and on about that one. That was fuel for me to say, no, that's not true. We need to start talking about our successes.
Exactly. And you've pointed out a number of things that I think those societal norms actually, like where my question goes is, why does someone want to keep us in line? Right. And so you have to ask yourself that question. Like, when you're talking about accomplishments that you've made, things that you've done that you're proud of, there's a difference in saying that with authenticity and humbleness versus arrogance and ego. Right. But why would someone want to keep you in line? And you're so accurate on that. Like, you see it all the time, and you see it within corporations, you see it politically, academically, you see it, like, it comes up in pretty much all aspects of our lives.
Because you end up being the worker bee. You end up doing all the work, and you do that much more because you want to make sure you're even more prepared than you even need to be. So it's that 120% where actually you need to be just 70%. And I'm sure 70% is the new perfect, but that's where people like you to be a hidden gem. They want you to be doing more work than you're supposed to, because you're trying to be so good that they can't ignore you.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. I have to be that good, and they're still going to ignore me. Oh, I guess I'm not good enough. Oh, I have to work even harder. Okay, I'm still not getting attention. I have to work even more. And it's not that, look at me. It's so I'm not getting what I'm due. Yeah. Somebody else is stealing my credit, because everyone on this call is already good enough. This isn't a book about you need to be better. This is a book about talking about your successes, these things you've already done, and letting people know about them. It's the credit that you already deserve, but someone is taking your credit. And that was another thing from the research, is that I can't remember the exact number, but in the 70s for sure, said people were taking their work, lifting their name off of it and putting it in their, the other person's taking it and lifting it essentially and putting their name on it. And it's not work that you're doing for your leader or for your client. This is them taking your work and putting their name on it and taking the credit that you rightly deserve. And it happens over and over again. And you know what? We're a team. Of course, I'm going to let it go. But there's no I in team, but there is I in credit. And when we give up our credit over and over again, credit doesn't know to come to us. Nobody knows that we were the lead on that project, or we landed that client. So a lot of it is just claiming the credit that is due. And that is authentic. It's not screaming and saying, that's mine, but it's saying, you know what, I contributed this, I contributed that. It's saying, here, I contributed. That's one of the easy ways into bragging and self-promotion. Here's my contribution. And then it is what it is. It's a contribution. I contributed. It's not saying I did all of this, and you're not pounding your fists on your chest and saying, look at me. It's really saying, here's my contribution.
Love it. Love it. And what I heard there, Lisa, too, is it's, when you own what you've done, what you've accomplished, it's an acceptance as well, right? Like, don't downplay that. Like, it's super important for you to recognize and accept what your contribution was, who you are. And, I know for myself, one of the things I work on with clients is create that brag book. And that's what I call it, a brag book, right? Like,
Yes.
put those accomplishments in there, write things down, because you don't always remember, and things that you take for granted. Somebody else would be like, oh my gosh, like, Vicky, why didn't you tell that story? Like, that's such a great accomplishment. And I think we forget, and it goes back to what you were saying in the research with culture, the perfectionism, societal norms, all these things that keep us from doing that. So it's okay to own it. We're encouraging you, own it.
Yeah, own it. And, tell other people about it. So it doesn't, and it can just be one person, that one person that matters to you. Tell her, but it's also a gift to anyone that you're trying to attract. So if you're trying to get a promotion, let your boss know, let your leader know that all these great things, it's a gift to them to know all these things that you've done. Yeah. And then if you're an entrepreneur, I've seen so many entrepreneurs forget to tell their clients their successes, and they're waiting for their clients to ask them. It's like, no, don't wait for someone to ask you to tell a story. Tell a story, have a story ready to go about your successes and how you achieved something. Don't wait to be asked, have it ready to go, but offer it first before they even ask you for it, because that's what other people are doing. And that's the expectation nowadays as we play in a global economy and a knowledge-based economy. It's different than it was 15 years ago, 35 years ago. It's a different place. And that's why these social norms, they're out of date. We're now in the knowledge economy, the imagination economy. So we need to rethink thinking about bragging and self-promotion as taboo or icky. That's another thing. A lot of people identified it as icky. That was the word. But we need to move past that and say, I need to own my success and take one step of courage towards it. And people always say, well, I'll do it when I get confident, but I don't believe we ever get, all of us high achievers, we're on to the next thing. So you're always doing one step of courage and then putting it out there instead of waiting until you're confident. Because you know what, we're always on to the next project. So confidence is then waning because you're onto something else, because you're always stretching. We're always stretching.
100%.
That's the imposter syndrome experience. We're always stretching. So just have some courage. I talk about in the book, fear plus 10%. Put your toes at that end of the diving board and jump, but have fear plus 10%. Don't hesitate and own it. And that's the way you'll start to get comfortable with it, is just owning a little bit of it at a time and build up to it. This is a practice and a skill. And it's one that I have to keep coming back to. I am a hidden gem. I will hide myself. I will not talk about my successes, but I realize if I'm here to serve other people, I need to do that. I need to talk about myself. And that's the reframe I'd love to leave with everyone here, is that it's about service. So if you reframe bragging from that, oh, I'm so good, look at me, and here's my yacht, and here's my, because it's all context. If you have a yacht, that's great. But it's that, here's my bags of money or whatever, it just gets your ire up about bragging. If you reframe it to say, it's actually about service, and it's here's how I'm here to serve, not be a servant, but being of service. This is how I can help the world. That's the reframe to take bragging and self-promotion, is it's of service.
I love that. I love that. And also when you were talking about those steps of courage, that actually reinforces confidence, right? Like they go hand in hand, because every time you take that little step, you actually are building your confidence along the way. And, we're not going to be confident in every single aspect of our life. So take those baby steps and learn. The other piece though, Lisa, when you were just saying that, what came to me was, when you're able to articulate those achievements that you've had, or to brag about the things you've done, that is a gift in a different way as well, because you're actually giving someone else permission to share their accomplishments, right? And so we shift from, putting people down from that negativity into, hey, how do we lift each other up? And yes, I have gifts and you have gifts, and he has gifts and she has gifts. And so everybody then is able to share that. And so it changes that societal norm to a different norm, which is what I love personally. I think that, and that's why I said your book was so inspiring. And like, I'm taking copious notes as I'm reading it. And I'm like, there's so much richness, in what you share. And one thing you talked about, and I think is super important, and you mentioned just a minute ago about imposter complex, when self-promoting, a lot of people do feel like a fraud, right? So what are your thoughts on staying grounded? Like, instead of going down that path of imposter syndrome or feeling like a fraud, how do you stay in that place of your greatness, and own that?
So again, thinking about it as service, but it's all context. So what we think is bragging and self-promotion is one thing, but what someone else hears is another. So knowing that you can't change other people's minds if they don't like what they're hearing, first of all, it's on them. That's their own internal jealousy, and we can't do anything about it. So just make sure that whatever you're talking about is important to you and that it's of service. That's the first place to start. That here, I'm going to let people know about this, because if they know that I was able to land a $3 million client or whatever it is in your world, that they need to know that. So being of service is the first place to start. And then realizing that other people do want to cheer you on and talk about success with you. So I think that's exactly it where you're mentioning, Vicki, is that people do want to hear about your success stories. So knowing that and starting from that position instead of starting from that scarcity mindset is really important. So it's abundance over scarcity. So starting that way. Yeah, right. It's always, how do we help each other and also be in the scarcity mindset. And it's also stop being a perfectionist. Like right now, I turned off all my elements and still my phone is buzzing. So stop being in that perfectionist mindset. That is one of the other things I would say is be of service and don't wait for perfection.
Yeah.
Celebrate moments instead of milestones. So those moments along the way. So many of us wait till everything is perfect. I got that next certificate. It's all wrapped in a bow. My hair is done. My makeup's ready. Oh, my nails are perfect. Oops, there's a chip, right? And then I have to do it all over again. We wait, or we wait for somebody else to acknowledge us. Stop doing that. We need to start with moments. Show us the moments and the work along the way, and then we'll come on the journey with you. So talk about the client that you're working to get, or talk about, the certificate you're working on. And also, do you really need that next certificate? Maybe not, but think about why you need it.
Love that. I have a story about that. Okay. That's good.
Yeah. So moments over milestones would be the next thing, is make sure that you're not waiting for that big, because like we said already, you're on to the next thing, and we're always on to the next thing. And so yes, courage and confidence, but we're on to the next thing already. And so what we think is good in the moment, we're waiting for the milestone to really say, hey, everyone, look what I did here, where it's already all past. So share your journey along the way. And again, the audience doesn't have to be everyone. It can be one, it can be two people, it can be all of your community, but start with just something small so you feel good about it. And I bet you that they'll be so happy for you, because success breeds success. So we are cheering for you along the way.
Yeah, it's true. And it's also, just to go back to your scarcity abundance mindset, it's recognizing we're in a world where there is enough for all of us. And we don't have to go into this place of it's finite, right? Like, oh, if Lisa's successful, Vicki won't be, or vice versa. No, there's enough for Lisa, for Vicki, for Johnny, for Susie, for everyone, because we all come at it from a different lens and a different perspective. And I remember reading in your book, one of the highlights that came out was that 85% of people said that there's a need to self-promote, right? And you said this earlier, like, if you're not sharing that, how do people know? You're not just going to get found, whether it's by your boss or your boss's boss or on social media or whatever. You've got to be able to self-promote and doing it authentically.
Yeah, you have to. We don't have a choice. Do I wish that somebody would come along and just stumble on my book and say, oh yes, I need that book? Yes, I do. But I have to be out there talking about it. And so you have to be out there talking about your successes. And yes, I know it's a product, but as I go into in the book, you don't have to have a product. It is the thought in being a part of the knowledge economy, you are selling often yourself and your own mindset. That is, you are able to do that through the book. And, just by some of the things that we're talking about today, but knowing that 85% of us are cheering you on when you brag, like that's amazing. So it's 13% will ignore you. And then the other, what are we at? The 3% will turn around and brag about themselves. So that's great. That's amazing. And it goes against what a lot of the studies have already found, though. And you'll see in a lot of business periodicals, they'll say, oh, don't brag and don't self-promote. It's so bad for you. Well, who they were looking at in their research was mostly university cohorts. So university students in the US, these are 20, 21-year-olds, maybe 22, who really are about, when you're that age, you really do want to just fit in. But as you get older and more successful in your career, you need to fit in, but we also need to stand out. So we need to collaborate, and we do compete, but collaboration over competition. And that's to your point that yes, we can have these conversations and maybe have the same ideal audiences, but they will take our stories differently and resonate
100%.
with us in a different way. Recently someone else came out with something about bragging, and I was like, oh no, oh my goodness, somebody else is talking about bragging. Oh no. And I was like, wait a minute, no, this is great.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
other people are thinking that this is something we need to talk about. Well, oh, great. And I flipped my mindset because I'm like, collaboration over competition. And so that's where, when you are collaborating with people who in the past you would have seen as competitor, you're aligning yourself and saying, well, I'm an expert at this level. I'm an expert at this level, and I'm not worried about them. And so you look and you're perceived in audiences as someone who should be at that level and the next level. And so it helps. But if you're in the scarcity mindset, hiding your stories, not talking about your successes, no one is going to find you. The internet is so big. I still hope that someone's going to find me on my tiny piece of this internet, but they're not just going to stumble upon me and say, oh, I'm going to hire Lisa and work with Lisa and buy her book. We have to be out there telling our stories, singing our own praises. Everyone else is too busy. Now, you mentioned it too, but the book is not just a me book. It's about how do we help each other to then grow together, partner and grow, so we can change this world to the way we want, because there's some really loud people out there. But if we can be the signal, the beacon, instead of adding to the noise, that's really what I want for all of us, because there's so many good minds listening in on this that we need to hear you and we need to see you, because you're the difference that we need.
100%. Oh, well said, Lisa. Well said. So I do want to go back to, one thing you were talking about earlier with sometimes that perfectionism, when you're talking about the hair and the nails. And, I hear this a lot from my own clients where they'll say, oh, I'm not ready to make that next move, right? Whether it be from let's say a VP into a C-suite, or it might be an entrepreneur, like ready to launch their next program. And it's like, oh, is anybody listening to me? And we do focus on that perfection. And you shared an example in the book about about your hair and your makeup, and then all of a sudden you had this realization. Can you talk about that just a little bit, on when that shift happened about letting people in, no matter where you are with with the journey?
I was just looking over because I was trying to find the book. So I have Michael Bungay Stanier is an author. He wrote The Coaching Habit, and we share the same editor. I was like, wow, okay. So that book has sold 1 million copies. So he was handing in his manuscript for his next book, and I had just handed in mine. And he posted a picture of himself right away and said, "Here I am." And I was like, I had taken a picture of myself too. And I'm writing a book on, self-promotion and moments over milestones. And so I see his picture pop up. I'm like, wait a minute. He just posted a picture of himself. What am I waiting for? And I was waiting for this, where my hair is done and I have some makeup on and I look awake, and my desk is still littered with tea. I do have tea here, but I wasn't going to take a picture because my hair was so messy. It was in a messy bun and I had no makeup on and I was, everything was unkept. I had worked, I had a deadline and I had done something I had accomplished. I had handed in my manuscript and he took the moment to share this moment with everyone else where I was going to wait till I was all coiffed and then show you something that was perfect and unreal. I'm like, why would I do that to myself? And why would I do that to you? Like, I would do that to you to say, now you have to live up to this standard that when you hand in your manuscript, you have to look like this. But why do we do that to each other? So that's where I realized, no, I'm posting that picture that I took at that time of myself because I wanted to celebrate. Good job, Lisa. Like, we have to pat ourselves on the back. That Bragg book is not just for other people, it's for you. You have to pat yourself on the back.
Exactly.
And I did that. And I took the picture and I posted it. I said, you know what? This is real. This is authentic. And I wrote a little story about that. And it ended up in my book. My editor said that's something that people need to see because we wait for these beautiful milestones. We wait till we're coiffed. But meanwhile, all these other people are getting, and of course, Michael Bunyé Stanier is an awesome author, but they're getting the accolades or getting noticed because they're in the moment more, where we're waiting for, again, that next certificate, that next promotion, that someone to come along and tell us we are that leader, that expert, that visionary. No, we need to say, I'm going to show this moment now because it does matter to me. And if it matters to me, it's going to matter to someone else out there. And I got, just as much celebration as he did for his work. And so greatly admire him. And he also I realized through that I needed to step up my game. And he then did blurb my book, which is very important in the world of when you write a book, that's someone who's written a book that's quite up there on the bestseller list, that he blurbed my book.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've worked hard on that and, you should brag about it. And I loved when I read that in your book, I loved that. And I'll tell you why, because I think myself personally, I was doing a bit more of that where it was, I only want to show the perfection side, and it inspired me to start to, share other aspects of my life. And so thank you for that. And that's liberating, right? Because it shows people that we are human, right? We get up with messy hair, we, we're doing whatever. And there's a lot of power in that because I think what it does is it level sets reality that we all put our pants on the same way, right?
We're humans having a human experience and all the facade of it all. And yes, we are, we're on this call right now. And if you're watching the video, we do look, ready for camera. So you have to be ready in the right places. It's not always that I'm coming on with a messy bun and showing up in pajamas, but we do need to level set. And I love the way you put that. It's like, how do we then let other people see that we're not always perfect? Because we set the bar so high that the people following after us, or even our peers, think that they have to have 150%, or 300%. There's no way. And that's where I talk about in the book, we say, oh, it was nothing. Well, don't ever say, oh, it was nothing. Even if it's baking a rhubarb, whatever, or brownies, it is always something. It is an accomplishment. Because when you say it's nothing, I know we're trying to be self-deprecating, which is one of the big no-nos, and especially if you're a leader, but it's that when we self-deprecate, the person who thinks, wow, look at Vicky, look at Lisa, wow, they're doing so many great things. Oh, it was nothing. Oh, how do I get there then? Oh my gosh. And it just it's like quicksand that we then don't tell people. It's a lot of work, but here, let me tell you my success story. So then you can easily replicate it. And that's what I really want is, how do we take off some of this armor and show people, yes, it's work and yes, it's worth it. But the self-advocacy part is part of our journey, and don't wait for other people to tell your story for you.
Exactly. Love that. Okay. I know we got to wrap up because I've had you on here for a while, but just a couple things. One of the other things you talked about in the book is, how do you help people talk about you? And I think you used the example of Dee
Taylor Eustace. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's just amazing. So, she's somebody who had been like highly accomplished architect and interior designer, and large firm that she owns. She designs the interiors of super yachts. We're talking the 400 million ones. And so has been on Oprah multiple times, and magazines, had her own shows. And so that sounds like, well, how do I ever get there? But it's making sure that you are setting yourself up that people can talk about you. So she stopped doing things for a while. She walked away from it and was just had her head down, was doing good work, but people were still knowing her and sharing her successes and coming to her. So when you start building up and getting your flywheel going, so all the things that you need to do, people will come to you with opportunities. And maybe it's not Oprah, and maybe it's not, magazine covers or your own show, but when you have started to brag and self-promote, people will then eventually find you. And that's what you want. You don't want to say, well, who do I know? Who's going to do this work for me? No. You want somebody to say, oh, Vicky is the person. And, the person who doesn't even know you recommending you, being that brand ambassador, that's what you really want. So that's what Dee Dee has. People don't even know her, but they know she's your go-to person for this, or have her on your board, and they know that. So that's maybe very high and lofty, but that's what you
Great
want.
example.
So, yeah. But if you want to be on a paid board, we need to start that work now so that people know that you want to be on that paid board. And so I talk about, we need to market to the future you. Like, what do you want to do in the future? And then it all falls into place. And so that's where do you want to go? And then let people talk about you instead of, and giving them the information. So having your website or your LinkedIn, if you're not inclined to have a website, but having it ready so that people can come and say, oh, there's all the credibility. I can easily refer her. I don't even know her, but she ticks all the boxes. And that's what we want, is that it's all ready to go so that you are recommended. And people want to connect people. There's so many of us that love being connectors. It's a position of power. so they want to connect you. You just have to let them, by giving them all the information. And I do help set that up in the book, but it's really, how do you be seen and heard so that people can then amplify you and become your brand ambassador? Then it's less work for you, and all these awesome opportunities will come to you.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you. That's awesome. It just, anything else you want to share with our audience that maybe I didn't ask today?
I think a lot of it is, it isn't a me book. It's about me and how I can help others. There's a whole chapter in there about leadership. So a lot of the things that we are talking about today, if we just changed it slightly and said, thinking about my team, as a leader, you can help your team with these things. So chapter 13 is dedicated to your position as a leader, to help your team and people around you to really be seen and be heard and thrive and flourish. And that's what we want for each other. So if you can do that, it takes away to that I can't have the spotlight on myself. Well, one easy step is to make sure that you put the sunshine or the spotlight on other people. And then that's, it'll come back to you for sure. So send it out there. One other thing I'd like to say, reviews matter. So review Vicky's podcast, give her a 5-star. It matters. Now that I'm an author, I see that, because we're out there, when you're doing big work, you want other people to see it. And the algorithms that we all live under now want to see that you liked our work. And so go out there and give Vicky a 5-star on this podcast, because it matters for more people to be able to see the good work that she's doing and the good work that anyone that you know is doing. And it also, it's a promotion, it's a self-promotion move too, because your name goes beside it if you wanted to, which you should. Say, hey, I really like this piece of work. Give it anonymously if you have to, because you're in that kind of business, but go out there and give someone else a 5-star today.
Love that. Love that. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that plug too. And just to wrap us up here, it's important for our audience to understand we bring great guests in for you so that, you can take away things that you can use every day, anytime. This one is, to me, this is a really important conversation because I see it so often. So go out and get Lisa's book, read it. Let us know what you think, right? If you have questions, you can reach out to Lisa. Lisa, how do they find you?
Yeah, I'm on most social media, that Lisa Bragg, 2 G's. I'm heavily on LinkedIn. I also have a website, lisabragg.com. And we also have a little gift that you don't have to give our email or anything, but it's I'll send you the link. It'll be in your show notes, but it's
Okay, perfect.
lisabragg.com, listener-love. And it's a little tool to help you get going on your thinking about self-promotion. But find me in those places and hashtag anything that you want support with, or for me to cheer you on with hashtag bragging rights, and I will find it and promote it for you too. Because I
Oh,
want
beautiful.
to see it out there, that you're out there doing this work and moments over milestones. And the more of us that are, you know, sharing the light with each other, then it'll be daylight. Success will be talked about in the daylight and not just a spotlight. So,
Nice.
so those are the places to find me, but please do come find me. And the book
Yeah.
is available everywhere. I always forget that you can buy it anywhere. And then there's an audiobook and, a print ebook, and of course the physical book too. So, which
Awesome.
my copy
I
has,
love the physical book, right? Because you get
yes,
to underline and highlight and
it has so many things in there. It has some to do, some thinking pieces to share and to consider. So it has some working things that you can work through in the book too. So thank you,
Awesome.
Vicki. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe it myself. But I really did enjoy, and I was super inspired by the book, and something I will recommend to my clients to read, because I think it's super important that we learn how to do this and to create our own brag books and make sure we're capturing those moments so that we, to your point earlier, you can celebrate in the moment. So Lisa, thank you. Thank you for being here with us today. And you know, we're grateful to, you know, to have you here and sharing your insight. And, you know, our audience, thank you for being here. We know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to. And so let us know what you thought of this conversation today. And if you're interested in learning more about your own leadership style, you can go on our website at WIL Empowered, that's 1L, and take our free leadership quiz. And that'll give you a lot of insight as to how you're showing up as a leader. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next show. So thank you, everyone.